You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
So welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with, now it's Amy Nicholls.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so what do you do professionally?
I'm a tattoo artist.
My uncle's a tattoo artist.
Yeah, you told me.
Do you
Where does he work?
He works at Independent Tattoo down here in Ocean City, Maryland. He owns a tattoo shop and trying to get a good idea of a tattoo I want just so I can book a session with him to get him on the podcast. He's a busy man, much like you are. You're very busy.
Yes.
And
and I'm sorry if I'm a bit of a dick. Can I cuss here?
I don't care. Cool. At least you broke the ice before I did.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, you're telling me. It's funny you're messaging. You're like, our conversation is going to be interesting because we're not getting each other. I was like, I bet if we're talking like actually like face to face, like seeing each other, we're going to get along a lot better than you.
Oh yeah, I'm much more an in-person kind of person. In fact, in our studio, I do all of my consultations in person for the most part. I really am resistant to doing things over the phone.
That's why you were saying, what was I so turned off with about a phone? First of all, like nobody really calls anymore. I mean, the average family dinner that used to happen 7 nights a week, family sitting down eating, turned into 3 at the most. And even then, people are just on their phone half the time. I mean, I go to restaurants. I talk about like with my cousin, he's a server. So he talks about like, I can't get anything out of anybody anymore on their phone. Like you're on a Tinder date and you're literally on your phone on Tinder with your date, like just swipe it, like, oh, just keeping my options open.
Yeah. I think for me, the necessity of the phone is how it helps me on Instagram and putting my work out. Like social media and all of those things, I mean, not that you couldn't do it and be highly successful. It's just one of those things that my work is translated best in a picture and then put online and for people to see. And that draws people in.
I've tried to understand, it's good for a creative aspect for sure. That's not where my problem with it is. My problem with it is where times where you should be having memories with your loved ones in the moment and you feel like you want to talk about it more than you want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I used to know these people, like, I've done a podcast with a social media guy named, he's a good dude, but he was telling me about like, there's a good thing about social media. Now I'm looking at it like everybody, the average person follows things they like, people they're interested in, famous people, whatever. And it does create a bit of a depression slope when it comes to, you get to see your favorite celebrity buying yachts and all this shit. And you're sitting there like, damn, I'm sitting here, my car just broke down. But he made a good point. Line up your social media with good motivational things as well, like follow people that are working on trying to either get fit. I'm a fitness freak.
That's good.
Don't follow, like I follow real bodybuilding pages, the ones where the guys show you like, this is my
follow my boyfriend. He's a strongman kind of trainer. Well, no, he doesn't train strongman.
Powerlifter.
He trains that himself. He doesn't train other people.
Yeah.
So he's not a power lifter. He goes for the I think there's a distinction between, maybe I'm not. I mean, I don't know. I try to remove myself from the room because the shit he does is so
insane,
daunting for me.
And
I'm like, you don't need my self-doubt in the room. Like, you don't need this right now.
Because like there's bodybuilders, then there's power lifters, and then there's the strongman competitions, which is like you're looking at the guy from Game of Thrones on there.
He wants to get up to 1,000 pounds for sure.
Okay, that's strong. That's strongman shit.
And he squats 500 like regularly and deadlifts I think it's been up to 725 pounds. Like it's a lot. And I try to just leave because I have bad joints now and I have things that are and I look at it and I look at it from my place. But he's been doing it for 7 years. And
it's crazy because they talk about like how much they have to eat to sustain themselves, and it's
Yeah.
like there's a guy, he actually won the Arnold Strongman competition, but he used to be a swimmer and had like a six-pack and everything. Now his breakfast is like he eats 8 plates of eggs and bacon with like 6 pounds of sausage. Then
Yeah.
2 hours later he'll have a snack, and he's constantly feeding himself, and you literally have to do that just to keep the muscle on you. Like you are literally forcing yourself to eat it. He says he makes him kind of sick, but watching that documentary was just crazy how many meals he would just pull out of nowhere.
Right. Well, he's always doing that as well, and he's always trying to get me to eat as well. And I'm like, honey, I can't eat what you eat. Like when I back out of the room while you're trying to do a big lift, I need you to back out of my diet because I cannot take in the caloric content you do. I will be a whale.
It's crazy because like if you want to know one thing you probably have seen so far is that the farts are insane.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Look, I heard it from my bodybuilding manager, Best. He goes, you ever been to a competition? I'm like, no, man, because like I get gassy and stuff. He's like, dude, they're protein farts. I was like, oh, really? And he goes,
It's
yo,
crazy.
the one place you'd think you'd never see them, he goes, there's the women's competition. As soon as you pull back that curtain, you're hit with a wave. And I was like, damn, so they are people
It's
just
true.
like us.
Women, well, that's something that just in being in a relationship, if you're with somebody who is like me, because I don't give a crap about nothing. Like
I cut it straight up. I'm sorry.
I pee with the door open. I don't care. Like the way I interact in my house is he just loves it because he's like, God, you don't get mad at me because I fart. You don't get mad at me because, I have regular things going on. And I'm like, yeah, no, they're bodily functions. And that's what has to happen. And I like applaud him. Like we do a rating system with our friends, given our farts and burps. It's like, oh man, that was weak. That one needs to be a little louder. And his are like better. This rumble from this barrel chest because he's got this like massive tank of a being. So it's just like, I don't have the octaves. Like there's no way I'm going to get there. But it's
I
fun.
can't burp, but I can fart like a simple. Yeah. Like, I mean, I can crack them. I mean, my first podcast was on nothing but taking a shit, only on the concept of like, it's something we can all talk about. Like everyone doesn't ever want to address it, but it's the dumbest thing ever. Like there's children books literally written on it. Like, let's just shoot the shit literally about shit.
Yeah, no, totally. Pooping is very healthy.
How did you get into tattooing?
Well, I didn't want to be a tattoo artist. I got into tattooing because I dated someone who suggested that I should. And he said, you'd be really good at it. He wasn't a great boyfriend of mine, but like I followed that relationship and kind of that whim on him. And he volunteered his skin. He bought me like a tattoo kit. I was a scratcher at one point. That's what you call people who are not working or operating in a studio. And so he was trying to teach me what he knew, because apparently at one point in his life, he had tried to apprentice and it didn't work out, which usually means that there was something wrong with him, that it didn't work out. And clearly there was. So I followed him to Kentucky and I got my first apprenticeship there at a shop called Cherokee Tattoo. And I apprenticed under this guy named Neville Baldwin. And he was my first kind of mentor. He showed me how to use the machine in a correct way. And I always had exercised bloodborne pathogen. That was something that my original boyfriend had shown me. But like, just for anybody listening, I was a conscientious scratcher. I wasn't hurting people.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of times people get misconstrued because it seems like anybody that can use a tattoo little kit, they can just start, tattooing anybody they want, start tattooing their friends. I know so many kids in school who are regretting the tattoos they got in high school when they thought they were tough shit. Like, bro, check out this diamond on my arm. And then like now they're like, I really want to get this tattoo covered up. And I'm like, you should have went somewhere. Like my mom literally told me and my brother when we were kids, like when you guys want a tattoo, we're going to your uncle. We are not going to anybody else. Next thing I know, my brother comes home with a fucking skull on his shoulder, a little tiny smiley face looking thing. Looks like you could peel it off like a Band-Aid. And he's like all in pain.
That's really not better.
He's like all in pain. And I'm like, bro, like, why didn't you just go to our uncle? He'd do it for free, and it's professional, and you could actually get it done looking
Oh,
good.
he
Not
didn't
like,
go? He didn't wait?
no, he was like, fuck it. My buddy does tattoos, and it's like taking a Crayola pencil and sticking it into your arm and just letting the dude jab you a million times.
Well, I think that that's a big thing that we run across. I get a lot of people that say, "Will you tattoo me when I'm not 18 with a signature?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." I'm like, "No, I think 18's too young." Like, honestly, I really, really do. Like,
I think you need to sit on it for a while because, like I was saying, I've been thinking
yeah,
about this for years now. This isn't something like I really want to get something for me and my buddy who his name's Skylar George. He's one of the people I talk
he
about
was
a
the
lot.
first that you started the podcast.
Yeah, he's one of my closest friends.
You guys talked about poop there too.
Yeah, that was our first episode. It always circles back
to shit.
Well, his brother passed away over an opioid addiction, which is why I went into chemical dependency, and I become a part of his family. Like in our New Year's Eve podcast, which is my birthday, like he's the one that bought me a 55-inch television that I discovered while we were recording the podcast. I was like, so why don't we have this nice TV setup? He's like, dude, that's your birthday present. I'm like, what? Like I literally thought it was an empty box. He's like,
that's hilarious.
He's like, oh, I thought you already knew. I was like, no. He's like, that's why there's a bow on it. I was like, I don't fucking know. It's like Christmas time. I figured that you got it for Christmas or something.
That's awesome.
But like he opened up on a podcast and me like, we're brothers. And
Yep.
we've been thinking for a couple of years now, probably a good 4 or 5 years now, what tattoo we would want to get that would be able to bond between both of us. Like my brother, he's my half brother. So all of his cousins, like my cousin that stayed with us over the summer, they're all want to get a tattoo that represents the Chester family is what they call it. Now I'm a Robertson. I don't have any cousins or anybody kind of around me. So besides my half brother. So it's like I can get that, but I want something that's going to be a distinct connection with someone that, you know, I care about as well. So besides getting a brother tattoo, I thought, hey, my best friend who's practically my brother, like let's figure out something. And we still have no fucking idea what we want.
It'll come to you when it comes to you.
Because I'll be like, bro, I want to get this white Celtic stag. And he's like, I don't want that. And I'm like, then what do you want? We live in a beach town. Let's get a shell, a squid, and get a pyramid with a fucking eye, and it's inside the shell. And I'm like going all out trying to make something badass. And he's like, I don't want that. I'm like, what do you want? He's like, how about we get a barcode on our wrist? I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
he doesn't want to admit.
Why
he
is
doesn't
mine
really want a tattoo?
Yeah, like why is mine getting shit on
for a living?
What
does he do? What does
He's
he do? For
HVAC special.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was on there. Well, he has nothing to lose. Like you can
That's not his thing. He's like, I like my skin. I'm like, yeah, but if we just get something like that we're bonded to, like, because obviously I talk about this too with social media. It's so easy to send a Snapchat now where you don't even have to hang out with people anymore.
No.
Like I haven't talked to him.
But
I know, but I haven't talked to him in months because we've been working so much over the summer. But I always know if I send him a Snapchat, it doesn't matter if we haven't talked in months. We're still best friends.
Yeah. No, that's kind of how it works. I mean, most of my friends, like I'll have people be like, I actually started ballroom dancing with my dad not too long ago, and during that, this woman came up to me. She's a little older than me, and she has kids, and she's like, oh, we should be friends. We should hang out. And I like her a lot, but I was like, you have no idea what being my friend is. Like,
you don't know me.
A thing. No, I mean, it's like, it's going to be a thing. Like, I see my best friends maybe once a year, twice a year. Like, it's hard to get those isolated moments where you have good quality time. We do make the time, but like, it's hard. It's really hard to have those kind of deep rooted friendships when you're so
busy with your own life. Like a lot of people don't understand when you graduate high school, those people you think are going to be in your life every day end up not being there all the time. And then you end up barely seeing them. Then everybody moves away, grows up, has a family. It's actually a common thing I always bring up with other podcasters. The fact that if they're doing a group friend podcast, they basically do it as a way of trying to hang out, like going to a bar or something. Yeah. But eventually, like, then they feel required by an audience to produce content. So then it's always getting them there. Then once they're there, it's not about like doing it for an audience, it's about having fun again.
Yeah.
The fact is just getting out of the door because we live in a world that's, I mean, it's beautiful, but the surface area of it, it's covered by a lot of people that are suppressed in a lot of ways where there might be freedoms, but it is pretty objectatory when it comes to creativity. You're seeing media play a good part in that mostly, but our education system, so many things that has a little bit of faults, and they are getting better, I will have to admit, but it is structured to pump out people that are Jim that works the 9 to 5. And that's not a lot of people nowadays. I mean, I used to see, like, if you look through from when I was a child, or you look back even through history, there was original creativity in a lot of things. But now we're getting the same kind of movies that are good, but it's a template. There's no original story behind it. They either fall on the basis of a superhero movie, they fall on the basis of, oh, there's a horror flick, but there's going to be a jump scare. Where's the original content? I want to see Jack Nicholson take a fucking axe and chop a door.
Well, I mean, I think that depends on what you take joy in, because I don't necessarily take joy in originality as much as I do something that makes me feel inspired to live. So to me, my criteria of art is kind of more about, because I truly believe nothing's new. I think that the things that humans create are from a very deep rooted sense of connection that we all experience together. It's like a collective conscious is what you tap into, I think, when you create. And I think that when you pull those things from you, you're pulling from archetypes that have existed from the dawn of human existence and our consciousness, the dawn of those things. The reasons why these archetypes throughout history, snakes, for example, are very symbolic. What do they symbolize? And what do they continue to symbolize in our knowledge of them throughout history and what they represent?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't even realize that. Like, it goes good with tattooing, which you're coming from it from a tattoo artist perspective as well. I mean, you draw how many times? Well, how many times do you write something or tattoo something onto somebody? It's a fucking koi fish. Do they understand the full meaning of that? Because for me, when I wanted to get a koi fish, people were like, "Oh, you just want to do it because it's mainstream." I'm like, no, actually, I was thinking of it because it's balance. I mean, I was really interested into the ancient Japanese arts when I was a kid. That ancient.
Well, and it was honestly, in my podcast, we discussed this just the other day. We were talking about how certain trends, like when you do fall into trends, when you're getting them. I remember when I first got into this, Japanese was like the height of like what people in our country were seeing. There were these full body suits, well comprised, like art pieces, and people were pulling from them because they were just so based in fundamentals of art and choreographed so beautifully to the body. And this was a culture of people who had really accepted this art form, like, and created it as a part of their culture. It was started from a very criminal element, the Yakuza, and then like built its way up into a more mainstream art form. But we took it and then we pulled from it, and it does have those meanings. But I try to, like, if you dip into those art forms and things like that, I think it's more about visually what you're wanting. Like if you want a koi, some people want a koi as a koi is, they're beautiful fish and what they are. And, you can get them done in a very Japanese style, or you can get them done in a very like new modern style. It's still going to be a koi fish. It's still going to have meaning. For me, I try to gear people now so that our connection with the internet is so vast, and it can be anything, that I try to really keep people away from falling into any kind of common vein of tattoo, simply because it will date you. And we know that more than anyone because we see the trends of those things. And we can very easily tell you, like, this is a Pinterest special. Like, this is something that I can tell you how many people are digging this on Pinterest. I can tell you how many people are coming at me wanting this thing that I don't do, that Pinterest is saying is the hot ticket right now. And that's cool if that's what you want. But like, you're putting yourself in a demographic of people where if somebody looks at that tattoo 10 years from now, they're going to go, you got that in the 90s, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but like everything has meaning. The point is that you have to own who you are at any point in time.
That's
And if
why
you
it's best
can't
to
do
make
that,
original concepts, because
yeah.
you lose originality when you look online, and a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it either. I mean, they go across their phone and quickly they glance at it and look away, and then they totally forget about it. But then it comes back like, I just got this idea for a tattoo. Next thing you draw it out, like, dude, that's the fucking Cartoon Network symbol. Like,
Well,
you
I mean,
want to,
I don't think you have to have original. I think you have to have relevant. So when you put something on your body, I feel like you have to own that as being a part of you, because it becomes a part of you. It becomes what people see when they encounter you. It becomes, I think it's important to know what your brand is, like
well,
what your own personal brand is.
that's originality, though, because that's an original concept. Usually it
Well,
means something to you. Like a sense of tattooing would be a sense of symbolism in a way. Like,
yeah,
it
but
goes from the veteran who had a baby that died, or it's whatever, and he gets his baby's heartbeat on his arm. That's
mm,
symbolistic. That's
yeah,
not what a lot of people would have. Or a lot of people would have a loved one's name and their death date on it, or they have something that means something to them. But what you're seeing nowadays is a lot of people getting the same shit over and over and over again. Like, what's interesting, and a lot of people give him a lot of crap for, Gucci Mane having the ice cream cone on the side of his neck. He's the only motherfucker that has a ice cream cone that I know of. So it's
no, I'm sure
original.
there's lots of ice cream cones.
It's not
But
a
it's like,
smart one, but it's original.
well, but the thing of it is like if you put an ice cream cone now on your neck, and if it was anywhere near reminiscent of his, then you'd be like, oh, you're trying to be like him. And it's like, for instance, so I can relate this back to haircuts. So when I was a hairstylist before I was a tattoo artist. I got this really amazing, like exaggerated bob where it was real short in the back and it had one side longer than the other. And it came to a point, and then this side was short over here. And it had this very Eon Flux, like Victoria Beckham. Okay, well, I got them before any of those motherfuckers got them.
The
Okay.
original OG.
I was in my little hometown of like Carroll County, Maryland. Ain't nobody seeing my ass, nothing. I'm thinking I'm coming up with something that's legit that I was owning. And Carroll County was recognizing it as like, dang, that's a dank haircut. But I'm telling you, as soon as that shit came out and I still had it and Victoria Beckham was sporting it, every person was getting it. And then I'm like, fuck, I don't even want this haircut anymore. Everybody has it. Everybody's like, did you get it like Victoria Beckham? I'm like, no, motherfucker, I got it before Victoria Beckham. That bitch, I had it before she had it. And you're like, so then it becomes this thing that if like you get something that you think is just going to be original, if that's your qualification, you're going to be sadly disappointed, because for
I,
me, human beings are so much more similar than they are dissimilar. Like
that's the thing.
we really are.
And we live in a world today that wants to manufacture the same people, but we are different. Every person is an individual, like a snowflake. Okay.
Well, yeah,
But
we have
we all
stories.
have distinctive characteristics that make us unique. Like I talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
our one primal human characteristic of caring for one another gets misguided by today's characteristic that is adopted for human nature. And it's one that wants to get exactly what you want only for you, or piggyback on something to get something for yourself. We have an original primal thing in us all that is only ever seen nowadays when something drastic happens, when a terroristic attack, when all these people come together, they drop who looks like who. You don't look like me. I can't agree with. No, doesn't matter. Your political party doesn't even matter. You
Yeah.
literally sit there and you all come together to get over this tragedy. I don't like that has to be the example, or that's what has to be the scenario that has to happen. But it's because we're living in a world where we come home and you don't want to do anything. You
Yeah.
really most people just want to come home and go to sleep. They're like, I've had enough for today. I'm going to cancel my plans tonight, and I don't feel like doing this tonight, because you're dealing with so much what I call stress fractures throughout the day, and nobody's really communicating anymore. People
Well,
post.
I do.
Well,
I
I'm
do.
talking about the majority of people. I'm not talking about
But,
you.
well, I know, and I agree with you, like on some levels, but I think that's because people aren't recognizing the fact that no matter how individual you are, where this becomes a not okay thing to stretch your own individuality is within a conversation. Like when you're having a conversation, the point is not so that you can be heard. A point of a conversation is to learn about something outside of yourself. And
That's
I
what
think
I do
that's
with
what
my
a lot of
podcast.
people, yeah.
It's taken me forever. I mean, not really that hard, but it's taken me a while to just try and be open-minded on everything. And I found that being more open-minded, like people always talk about, like, I don't know, like they always think when I invite them on, what do I want to talk about? Why is it going to be an argument? I'm like, it's a conversation. So wherever it goes,
You
it
get
goes.
that too? Do you get the whole thing where people think that you're having an argument?
Well, it's because people, like, I've only had one podcast, and the guy did a debate podcast, but it wasn't even an argument. It was more on, like, we just didn't understand what was going on. Like, he thought that schools shouldn't have to pay for kids' lunches. Kids should still have to pay for lunches. And I was like, hold on a second. I've come from a public school. I've seen and I've been through many times not having a lunch and wishing I could get a free lunch, and then eventually getting a free lunch. And I was very happy because my stomach wouldn't hurt anymore. So
Right.
I can see that. And I was trying to see it from his perspective. And I later figured out, like, oh, wait a minute. I'm from a public school background. You're a teacher at a private school where kids are paying $64,000 in tuition to go there, and they're coming in on like helicopters and all this shit. And he goes, yeah, they shouldn't have to, they should have to pay for their own meal because they they Uber Eats to the school with pizza and stuff. I'm like, okay, now I can understand it. Then you should be able to afford your own lunch. But for a public school background, a kid maybe whose mom works 3 jobs, doesn't have enough time, or totally forgets, this is very beneficial to them. And then that was
Yeah.
the only, like, there's no arguments ever. You're
Yeah.
just talking.
Yeah.
If you talk about politics, all these things we choose to stigmatize, you're making it stigmatized by not bringing it up. Talk
Yeah.
about religion,
Well,
talk about it all.
as somebody who, on that note, like as somebody who pays into, I mean, I think it's 20 or 30% of my property tax goes to the public school systems that are around here. And I'm a woman who doesn't have kids and elected not to have kids. So for me, if my money is going to the public school system, I want that money to go towards a kid that, whose parents couldn't, because I elected not to have kids doesn't mean that I don't care about kids. Doesn't mean that
Exactly.
I don't want kids to have
Hey,
opportunities.
I have so many times in my life where I don't think I'm ever. I actually talked about this with my mom. I said, I don't think I'm going to have kids. And she goes,
Yeah.
why? You're very, very caring. I was like, no, because I knew how much of a bastard I was when I was a kid with ADHD. I told her, I was like, how the hell did you not drown me at a lake or something? Like, how did you not take me for a little trip? And she goes, there were times, but you were just your own, you're unique. And obviously I snapped on you so many times. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I would deserve a lot of it. Like, how many times did I make when, like, my dad would only be home for a couple hours because he worked multiple jobs. So in his DJ gigs and radio gigs. So he would take a nap. And what he would do is I was like, I don't want to take a nap. So we're taking a nap. So I'd cry. And then I'd sit there and you just hear me go like that whole thing, like gasping for air. And he slept right through it. I was like, if I was him and I had a kid that was doing that, I would have snapped and lost. I've seen the kids in the store that are throwing the temper tantrum. I'm like, lock his ass in a hot car. And my mom just goes, it'd be different if it was
your kid. It's true. It's very, very true. It's, well, and you and I share a love of Joe Rogan. He had, I forget, was it Brett Weinstein? He's a biologist. And he was talking about how men have a lot of connection to their biological seed. And like, honestly, that's the reason why you partner up with a woman altogether, is because
it comes straight from the sack, like Santa's little goodies. So it's
well, it's an easy thing to become a dad, but then when you are a father, you realize this like crazy respect for like life and giving life that you didn't have before, because then you've watched a person, even if it's not a person that you have the utmost love for, but you have so much more love and appreciation and respect for this person, this woman who's just carried then your child. Like, there's something very ingrained, I think, when a guy like, creates a baby like that. I've heard it from multiple men. And as somebody who doesn't have kids, I have to speculate about all these things because I don't know. But for me, that makes sense. That makes sense because a lot of the guys that I've met, they're like, honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want kids. It seems like a lot of crap. And it is a lot of crap. But I think that the minute you find like a person that just it's easy with, like, the movements that you go through life with is easy with, like, this person endears themselves to you more and more, whether they're, same sex, different sex. I do think when you get a certain kind of relationship, as a smart, like, to me, as a more, maybe not smarter, maybe high anxiety person, ADD person, because that's kind of how I identify too. There's just so much on my mind constantly that I couldn't agree to have a kid and make my life more complicated until I had somebody in my life that was able to take a lot of the weight off of me.
Well,
in a good way.
that's what Joe Rogan talks about with Sarah Silverman. She never wanted kids, only on the concept of she didn't like how her mother treated her and knew she was going to end up like recreating the same thing
like that.
because
Yeah.
she put all her time into work. But Brent Weinstein put up a good point. When it comes to the genetics of a guy, there is a difference between genetics with a girl as well. With the chimp study that Joe Rogan talks about, where they took 50 chimps male, 50 chimps female, and they put a toy in front of them like a hammer, and they put a stuffed animal. All the males, except a very few, which are known as the sensitive ones, would immediately go towards the hammer and start bashing stuff around. Now, the females would all grab the bear and start nurturing it. It's a nature nurture aspect. See, with the guys, you have this primal thing about you that comes out usually when you have your own kid, that literally you feel an oath, or you feel like you need to make sure you protect
it's a purpose
them.
It's a perfect purpose. And I think there's also a lot of just understanding of a full circle of things. Like, the thing that I've noticed, and this is funny because it only happened in tattooing. Like, people used to come up to me and they're like, what is it like to be a female tattoo artist? And I was like, I don't know how my vagina has anything to do with tattooing. Like, it never correlated to me, but I have seen this. And I think that this is distinct. Women tend to collaborate a lot more. Like, we're not in a competition, I feel. Whereas men, I feel like very much so need to compete to validate who they are and what they are in a station of life. Like you said, I got to see my idols like buy their next yacht. It's really fucking sickening. Whereas I'm like, good for you, babe. Like, whenever I'm like seeing women like Sarah Silverman online and I see that she's happy or that she survived like fucking whatever, I'm like, dude,
I talked about this. I talked about this in a podcast that like whenever a guy steps in a room with another guy, immediately it's like a self-conscious or subconscious thought. You immediately start sizing them up. And then me and my buddy are sitting here. I'm like, you know how long it takes for someone to decide that they're hungry enough to eat somebody? And he goes, how long? I was like, 7 days. I was like, so if we got stranded on an island, who's killing who first? And he goes, well, I think we could just probably live off each other's like fingers. Maybe someone sacrifices an arm or something. I was like, dude, one day we're going to get so hungry where somebody's getting bashed upside the head with a rock. Like,
dude, I mean, maybe, but like, if you were asking my boyfriend about that, he's like, nah, man, that's a victim mentality. If I got me and my boys, man, every motherfucking deer from here to whatever is dying. He's like, we are fucking hunting, dude.
Nah, you're on a beach. You're on a beach with one palm tree. There's no fish in the water. You're in some apocalypse. This is what I'm talking about. Apocalypse survival. There's no other source you can't drink the water. You can't do shit.
Dude, in every survivalist situation, whether it be Walking Dead, whatever, you notice what happens. It doesn't become about the zombies. It's about the politics of what happens with human beings who need to figure out how to regroup, reorganize as a community, and work together in order to assault the imminent threats around them. And that's what happens with the evolution of human beings. We are collaborative beings. We have to work together. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that nobody's made by themselves.
Well, see, the thing is,
nobody.
we are meant to work together, but
Yes.
at the same time, we cannot be around each other 24/7. This is the same
No.
reason why if you live with your family and everybody's in the house for longer than a week without anybody going anywhere, somebody's reaching for a butter knife. And that's only because of the concept of we are able to communicate with people. That's why we create communities, people that have our same minded opinions and things. But not everyone's able to connect. Not everyone's able to bond. We're not meant to like one another, and we're not meant to be around each other 24/7 because you need that break. You need that
Yeah,
relaxation.
but that's different than coexisting.
Well,
Like
I was talking about
coexisting.
eating somebody on an island, and you're bringing
Yeah,
up
but
a
like
scenario.
I don't think you would have to do that. I mean, I've met people who've been on Naked and Afraid. Like they were able to do it for like 30
I'm not
days.
giving you that option as that being your island though. That's like the prestige of islands. I'm talking about there was so many nukes that the whole world is basically thrown into peril. There's 2 people left on Earth, and you're on a small little sand of water where it's about the length of a coffee table, and there's not even a tree on there. You have all the water is polluted, so you're sitting there. It's going
Well,
to take
I'd
7
like to
days.
think that for me, I'd spend a lot of time. I mean, maybe this is like you said, the difference between guys and girls, but like I would spend a lot of time working with this person to try and get food. And then through our adventures of getting food, if one of us got hurt before the other or got sick before the other, and it was looking like it was going that route anyway, then maybe that would be an option. But that's like on the low end option for me. Like
You
for
took
me,
a
it's more
very
important.
critical route in thinking of this stupid little kind of plan. I had this idea.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I think it's necessary and not necessary. I mean, it's necessary because it's fun to think of things like that, like just as a tease, because that's a creative mind. Like, you just go outside of the space that you're in and create this whole other scenario. It's cool. But like it is like I always say to my friends, like people who get too in their head about it, people that are like buying extra like toilet paper, not because it sucks to have to go out and buy things like toilet paper, but because they're like, well, what if a snowstorm just happens? And I'm like, then you piss in the snow, man. What are you, how is your life going to be severely impeded? You think that you're not going to, like, what kind of doomsday scenario are you envisioning to where you're not going to have enough toilet paper? Like I have friends like that get so in their head about like the like the little fall of our country, and they're stockpiling. And I'm like, dude, you realize, I hope hope you're okay with like defending this shit and like tearing people's eyes out, because they're going to come for your shit.
I'm not a doomsday prepper at all, but when it comes to toilet paper, I ran out one day of toilet paper and I had to use a sock. And
Why?
because I was a kid and I didn't realize I could have just hopped right in the shower, which I ended up doing anyway. So I just used a perfectly good sock. But I ran out of toilet paper, and I swear
Water, man.
after 3 hours of sitting on that toilet and deciding to use a sock, and then ended up jumping in the shower. Every time I go to the store, I buy a pack of toilet paper, 4 rolls. I have a whole closet that is stock filled of just
That's
nothing but
cool.
toilet paper. My mom,
We do too, because we don't like to run out of it. Because
yeah.
we just don't like going to buy it, and we don't like a circumstance where
Well, I shit so much. It's like I gotta use toilet. Like I go through a roll maybe every 2 days.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing it right. You're making sure everything's
I make sure I don't get any of that on my hand.
Yeah, that's good. We had a debate. Our boss has this thing where everything, I mean, in the tattoo world, you want your paper towels to be rolling out, like be over top of the roll, not under the roll. You don't want things to peek under the roll, because it's important, because for bloodborne pathogen and stuff like that, you don't want to be grabbing something and touching the wall or touching the back. You just want to grab the thing itself. So that's his across the board rule when it comes to anything like that. Anything on a roll that is horizontally placed, it has to be over, not under. And Kinsey and him, our coworker, was like, why is that, John? Like, why with the toilet paper does it have to be over? Like, he's like, so you don't get shit on the wall. And she's like, why are your fingers shitty?
Yeah.
She's like,
do you check before you wipe? Like, did I actually go?
How did your fingers get shit? Did you try without toilet paper first? Like, when did your fingers get shitty before?
I love it how all my podcasts lead into shit somehow. I swear, I've listened to maybe a few at different points, like from my start to like the middle and to my most recent, and they always fall on the lines of poop. I think it's just because life's shit, but it's the good type of shit we can joke about.
Well, I mean, I think that that's like a very, it's a point of shame, right? Like, I don't think there's anything that kind of embarrasses me the most than watching a dog take a shit.
Dude, it looks you right in the eye. I took a shit
Well,
between
they
two
do,
parked
but
cars.
they kind of look you in the eye like it's not without a lack of shame. It's just of like, I'm doing this, man.
Yeah,
like I'm doing it.
They actually did a study and found out it's actually a more of a primal thing inside of them, like because they look at you as like their caregiver and everything.
Uh-huh.
So when they do that, they're looking at you and letting you know, like, I trust you enough for this to happen, and know that with you I am connected. And it's just really awkward because they're like squatting really, really hard.
Yeah.
And if they can't get it out, their eyes get opened up wider and their legs start clenching up, and you're sitting there watching them
and it's exactly how we would get, like, if we dared each other to do that in person. Like, there's a lot of, places where people do that, and it's like, it is what it is, man. Like, I am so far past shame at this point. Like, I think that's like the root of why a lot of people like to do these doomsday fear-based scenarios, is because they're not really testing themselves in any real fear-based scenarios in life. Like, to do a podcast, for example, like, this is putting yourself out there in a very vulnerable way. The way that you communicate and putting yourself out there in a way that people can listen and judge you on a very public platform, that's kind of taking a leap that not a lot of people would take. In having now had a couple podcast opportunities and experience, it's like I've gotten a lot of pushback from people. I've done a lot of things that a lot of people are like, whoa, I'm terrified of that. How do you do it? And then there's a lot of things that other people have done that it's not so much I'm scared of. I just am like, wow, that's not a fear factor that I find I want to cure. Like, people were like, oh, I've swam with great whites. I'm like, cool, awesome. I have Shark Week and I'm good. I don't need to see a great white ever. Like, cool, that's something you want to encounter, and that you are like, I have no interest. Like, no interest. I'm cool where I'm at with the water. And I pretty much know enough about the ocean to be like, yeah, that I'm gonna leave alone. Like, that's cool. I'm gonna ride on boats and take my risks, but I'm not. It's something I kind of know too much about. And jumping out of planes, things like that, I'm not interested in. But doing public speaking, to me, that's a fear you should override that a lot of people don't.
Well, it's a primal thing. The reason, I don't know if you saw Whitney Cummings talk about it, but it's actually something with inside of us where we feel like when we're speaking publicly, we're presenting ourselves. Because usually back in the day, like when hunter-gatherer days, when you were doing something, you were pleading a case. You were fighting for something, like you did something wrong and you were pleading to the group of something, or you were suggesting a plan. That's why you get nervous.
Or just at a very primal level, if you're separated from a herd and all these eyes are looking at you, you are now something that's a point of attention. Any person who seeks to be an entertainment-based person, a person of note, takes higher risks in their overall survival, because they're putting themselves at not an evolutionarily advantageous point in view of everything else. They're a little crazy because they're risking their own death, because you're also being seen by people who want to hurt you too, like predators and all that stuff. When you're segregated from a group, you are no longer a part of this noise, the static of a herd that people can't see through. Now you're very clearly seen in any kind of way. Just by moving yourself like 8 feet away from a group, you're now more of focus than you were before.
That's why the Pope's so badass. He took out the Popemobile. He said, if someone's going to shoot me, then they're going to shoot me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of things. I model nude online. I don't think I have the best body in the world, but I don't care about nudity. And a lot of people do. And that's the reason why I do it, is because it's a fear that most people have of being seen in a way that they don't like. I have cellulite, I have stretch marks, I have points in my body I don't like. But I'm no different than any other person who views themselves. Even models talk about the fact that they're so super insecure. Like, they're constantly picking themselves apart. They don't see what other people see. So if they don't see what other people see, why would I hold back about who I am and what I am? And I think that's a lot of the things that people don't dare to really do now, is be seen. And that's why they have so much fear of like what would happen if something fell apart. To me, nothing would really happen. Like,
Well,
I would say this,
life's beauty
yeah,
is in its imperfections.
yeah, and you're going to deal with it whatever way it comes to you. Like, you're going to deal with it. You're going to be fine, because ain't none of us getting out of here alive. Like, we're not living through life. Like, we're going to die. All of us are going to die. So like, when you have wrapped your brain around that, it's like, well, now what am I really scared of? Like, to me, those are exercises I do regularly with myself. And I try to put myself in very baby ways in alignment with my fear factors, because I feel like that helps me not be so resistant to change. And it helps me kind of know my place in the world. For instance,
That's what I was trying to
yeah,
explain to you in the
yeah.
beginning, and you gave me shit for, which was with my phone. I saw a fear of how addicted I was getting to it, and I realized it was a problem that I needed to fix, and I isolated it from myself, where now I use it at reasonable times.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I get that. I was giving you shit about it mostly because it's the first tier of like qualifying an addiction and like taking away from others. It's a very natural course of addictive behavior when you find you have that kind of
Trust
thing.
me, I know. I went to school for chemical
Yeah, like,
dependency. It's all
yeah.
I
So
know the routes.
afterwards, I mean, like, I there's a whole call for extreme abstinence, especially with drugs, because they are things that, without a doubt, most of them, like,
You can't just
not
cut clean
pot, not
off. You
things
can't
like
just,
that.
yeah, you can't cut clean off of alcohol because you will die. I mean, you can't,
Yeah, like,
you're going to experience withdrawal effects, but like, just like it takes 21 days to form a habit, it takes 21 days to break one as well.
well, not only that, but like then the abstinence afterwards. Like, so for me, the biggest things that draw somebody to an addictive personality. Now, granted, there are drugs that like will just hook you right away. They will. But to be the kind of person you'll just do those drugs that'll just hook you with the awareness that they do that, you have to be in such a state of pain, I think, and mental anxiety and emotional depression to say fuck it to those kind of things and just do them, because they're going to cause you peace for that moment and that's all you're concerned about.
Well, they want the pain to go away, and
Right.
it's reasonable to understand it from that way. That's actually what if you want to take it another route, comedians, you know, that they've been
Yeah.
through hardships. That's why they're funny, is because they never want to create a moment of pain. They want to make laughter in a place.
Right.
They want to see and happiness in others as well, even though
Yeah.
they might not be able to bring it themselves. And with a tattoo artist, you know, a lot of people get tattoos and they talk about it covers up pain or covers up this, and it's an expression of oneself. See, where true pain lies
Hello?
is where true pain lies is when someone is not ever able to express themselves to the way they feel like they need to be expressed.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know how we got from pooping to motivational speaking, but this is,
Well, I mean, it's good. I mean,
it's
you're with
amazing. I like it. I like
you're
it.
with me first. And it's kind of one of the qualities of my tattoo experience, because this is how I talk with my clients. Like, this is why I wanted a podcast, and that's why Joe Rogan was very much so one of my idols, was because I do this with people. Like, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but whenever people come to me, I love accepting people. I love finding out who they are. I love finding out how they think, and giving them a space that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have, of just feeling no shame And to me, like, that's why I like the belief that we're more connected than we are separate, because to me that welcomes everyone and allows me to be kind of a person who sits there as an not an analyst with judgment, but an analyst nonetheless, to let people just kind of vent and filter whatever is on their soul at the time. Because when you let those things out, it's easier to take on physical pain. Like, I think that's why a lot of people view it as cathartic, is because, one, they're getting a tattoo that means a lot to them, enough to put it on themselves permanently. And then the thing that adds the quality to me and some of the people that I work with is that we come and we take on their sad stories, their life, their difficulties, and we really have like a moment. Like, so this whole idea of like having a conversation with you like this is just like, oh, this is going to be like going to work for the day,
Yeah.
except for I'm not going to have to hurt someone today, which is kind of cool.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
Like, so that's the thing, is that like I always get into these kind of talks with people because I feel like I said,
It's needed. It's needed.
Yeah, and the reason why people form addictions, I think, goes down to what we were saying before about like people who are depressed, they feel like they're not in control. And I think a lot of them feel that way because they feel such a sense of loneliness and separateness, and like they're being actually attacked by the world around them, and they can't figure out why and what the meaning of that could be, and they're stuck in that perspective and they simply can't get out of it. And I feel like that kind of person, the thing that they have to learn the most is that the less they talk about that isolation, the more isolated they're going to feel. And a lot of them, like you said, like comedians, they're super depressed. They don't want that to be the extension in the world, because they feel that that's a burden to put on people, to put your sadness on someone. They don't like to ask for help. They don't like to ask for other people to uplift them, because somebody in their life, I don't know who, but somebody made them feel like they didn't deserve that kind of connection with someone else. Somebody made them feel guilty for having, grief, for having pain, for having hardship. And they don't feel like that's something that you can ask somebody to help you with. But the reality is that you can ask other people to help you with that. And that's what 12-step groups, anonymous groups, like they teach you, is that we're here to help each other, bear these weights.
It's about reaching out and finding the human
Yeah.
nature of people. And I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate you at least taking time to do the podcast. I know
Yeah.
it took us, we planned it out and everything, but I was glad we could get it done through miscommunication a little bit. But,
Well, I mean, I honestly, dude, I probably make things way more difficult than they have to be. Like, I feel you, like when it comes to like, it's the ideal and permanent fixtures all the time. Like, so for me, my life can't be, a quick fix. Like, let's glaze over everything that might go awry here. I want to pointedly get to every single thing. So I'm like, okay, what is the plan? Because to me, the end result of that plan normally with me is going to be, I'm tattooing this on you. And I don't want us to have a moment of where there's like, well, what's going to happen?
Mine's just like, hey, it's conversation. Let's just hop in it. No topics, nothing. Let's just do it. And you're like, what should I try to research anything? I was like, what? No, just let's go. It's conversation.
Well, no, I wanted to know that if I gave you, because I run a podcast too. And, so there's lots of ways that people interact. Like some people, they're like, they have a podcast. They need you to sign a release form.
I've talked to over 300 and something of them. Trust me, I know.
Yeah. So there you go. And then there's like, there's people that I never like to assume other people's boundaries. Like I like to state mine, and I like to try and feel out the whole thing. And when you're having like a random conversation, there's a way in which you can do that, so you can ensure that like you're
sure.
giving somebody all they need to have the best kind of environment. Like,
Yeah.
my therapist, she used to always say, like, if you have something you really want to tell somebody, but you're scared to do it, have them come here. And then you can tell them, like, my therapist or a therapist is only going to ensure like the best environment for both of you to be heard in this scenario. So it's for your safety and the other person's, because I'm going to mediate this shit and make sure that it's not going to be something where people attack each other.
Yeah, well, it's just it doesn't take much for people to learn how to communicate properly, even if it's not good communication. It just needs to be, if you sit and talk long enough, you're not going to ever just outrightfully hate somebody. We just get these brief interactions, and at least I appreciate you even taking the time to do the podcast. It means a lot, Amy, and I want to give you here kind of a minute at the end to promote your content so people can find your awesome podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. So I run a podcast called the Apprenticeship Diaries. It's at, well, right now we don't have a website. So I'm working on that. I'm working on a Patreon. I am found at IG. It is _apprenticeship_diaries, because apparently the whole word was taken by somebody else. So it has the underscores in it. But you can find us there. And then I'm also, if you want to listen to the podcast, it's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify.
Anywhere Anchor is.
Yes, exactly. And then I also have, it's a co-project with a friend of mine. She's now mostly hosting it, but I want to shout her out too, because Why I'm Single, the podcast is awesome. It's for anybody that, hasn't solved the code of relationships. So I don't think any of us have. So it's like, it's really good conversations about the bullshit people go through in relationships. And it's really funny. Amy D is awesome. And I join her every once in a while. In the beginning, we really started together, and now it's become hers. But she's like, you roped me into this. Like you said about hanging out with your friends. It's you roped me into this. Now I feel obligated to make content. And I'm like, well, fuck, don't do it if you don't want to do it. She said, well, it's going really good and people like it.
Yeah, she secretly loves it.
Yeah, she likes it. She's good at it too. She's really good at it. And she's had an IG account for forever, and it's _y_I'm_single is the IG account if you'd like to. She posts some really, really funny memes.
Well, we definitely have to. I'll link her too in the description, so she gets a little shout out too. And I appreciate you being on, Amy, and stay tuned for our next episode, Out of the Blank.